Can you talk a little bit about, because you talk a lot about repression, but can you talk about the link between trauma and repression?
Yeah.
Yeah, what happens? So almost like with examples, like this happens and then that happens. So it gets more illuminated for us.
I mean, I remember getting punched in 6th grade by a bully. And I remember, like, from that, when I was inquiring, what I found is both what we call like trauma commands and repression commands. That's our language, as you know, and you might not hear that out there. But when you talk about the difference between repression and trauma, here's how I can understand it in direct experience is that the memory of getting punched, there was actually programming with it, like run, you have to hide, like this isn't safe, physically safe, not safe. That's what I call like a trauma response or a trauma command. So in other words, my system protected me in that moment. As soon as I was punched, I mean, I went and hid for months actually, because I'd already been bullied a lot. And this was like the icing on the cake. So with that memory was run, 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 hide. And that stayed with me my whole life. The hiding part of it was being bullied. So trauma response, run, hide, connected to that. But like, for example, let me talk about a different memory. There are other memories of trauma in which I didn't feel physically unsafe, but well, as far as being punched or anything, but in order to survive the experience, I had to shut down an emotion or not express it, or a part of myself. So that had a different feel, although it's similar to a trauma command. Like with a trauma command, you hear and you feel run, run, hide. But with repression, it's like, it's not about running and hiding, it's about holding something back for safety. So the conditioning would be more like that, like, I can't show this. I have, this is not safe, I have to hide this, not myself, like hide in the closet, but hide this emotion. So what helps me understand is trauma's a lot about, even though there's definitely emotion involved in trauma, like fear, to me, it's more about taking some action or doing something to protect myself, fight, flight, freeze. And then repression is like a response to that. Like, and also because of what happened, I might have to shove something down and keep it shoved down. So when we go back and deconstruct it, we have to kind of look at it both, because we find that the trauma commands have energy on them and the repression commands have energy on them.
Yeah. So when you said it's more like you're not aware in the moment when that happened, this is more like later, I mean, much later in somatic inquiry, this memory came up on the screen with the feeling. So then you kind of unpack it slowly and you discover all these components, right? The image and the trauma commands or the repression commands, this thoughts that you were not aware in the moment, right?
Yeah. But let me say something about that. As you said that, it brought this up, is it has to be that way, I think, because how else would I have protected myself in that moment? If I had to sit and think about it, I probably wouldn't have done it. I mean, it wouldn't have worked, but it happens very unconsciously.
Yeah.
To us, like, it's like you're getting hit, run. You're not thinking about it.
It's
not. But what we found out is that there's thinking involved. There's a mind-body connection. So as we get to be adults, yeah, we don't hear the programming necessarily run or hold back anger, but energetically we feel all this. So that's maybe the way in for people, is like, even though you might not hear the command that tells you to run or flee, watch your body. Your body's doing it. In different situations, you're fleeing or you're fighting. There's energy behind that. That doesn't just come from memories. That's not just from a memory. There's energy with it, and there's programming that's requiring you to respond that way. But we don't hear it until we hear it. That's what you said. Until we make it conscious, we don't hear it. But what I'm saying to everybody out there is, you're already feeling it. You already know the energetic quality of being human. And there's programming with all of those responses. Like, mind, body.
Yeah. So, yeah, although, basically nobody really, I didn't have major fights or bullying and stuff as a kid, and I lived in a good neighborhood, in a good school. But somehow, looking back, I can see that I was I was cautious, cautious, and which underneath caution is like, I'm afraid. I'm afraid, I'm cautious. And now it also could be that this program of being cautious / be careful, watch out, I'm afraid, this, I think my father lived in that because it was very stressful and difficult those times. And my mother, so, but I remember like being, all of these programs basically were happening, was controlling my behavior, how I showed up as a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, like, yeah, no, noticing, scanning, and people, you know, in Romania we had, you know, this with the gypsies, you know, no disrespect, I mean, but in Romania the gypsies were dangerous, so they would bully people or steal or do all these things. So there was all the time this like, avoid the gypsies or bullies and all that. So, and so I could see now that this was playing this, be careful, and hide. So although I became aware of this program more like 2 years ago or a year ago. I have to hide. I have to hide. Yeah, I have to hide a bunch of stuff. I have to hide emotions. I have to hide, to not stick out. Don't stick out. Also in the communist regime, I think in China too, I think somebody was saying on Facebook, like, you don't want to stick out, because they have this, there's a Chinese proverb, the snail that sticks out is get head by the hammer. So you want to be invisible, to hide. So I guess, you know, for newer people, this, we talk, this is part of the KI speech, but so these trauma commands or repression commands are a very short word, maximum maybe 2 words, that are thoughts. However, they are very directive, imperative. They are coming from within us to seemingly protect us, to tell us what to do or not to do, which are much more stronger and then conceptual thoughts, philosophical thoughts, non-duality, much more. It's almost like they are coming from the reptilian brain. And to giving some example, like, you know, also this is universal. That's what I appreciate about this. I found it in everybody I work with, and actually pretty quickly. You can find them pretty quickly. They come out of people's reaction, pain body, like be quiet, you know, not saying something, hide, be nice, be nice, hold back. Do you have some more examples, maybe trauma commands?
Yeah, I mean, like, shut up, brace yourself, don't, can't, hold it in. There's a number of them, and of course they elude me as I try to think about it, but in anything that you can, like anything that has to do with action can be, in your experience, it'll be different for everybody. So there's probably too many to list, I think is what I'm saying, but it's like that kind of man language.
Yeah. I know, I mean, in terms of the, there's this called this attachment trauma. Even in the psychological field, it's very attachment wound, attachment trauma. Let's say when the mother or father or the child, I don't know, they die, or somebody leaves, and in the early stage of development, either as a baby or early stages, there's this loss or separation or abandonment. I noticed with a bunch of people, including myself, these things, which is, you're right, it's charged with energy, not just words. There's this thing like, don't leave me, don't go, don't leave me, don't leave me, which is charged with some kind of intense energy of sadness, despair, loneliness, fear, terror. Yeah.
Well, one thing I wanted to say to people, in case they hadn't thought about it this way, is if you're listening to like me getting punched, you might think like, okay, so you go out and you walk. This is kind of off subject, but not. People who walk alone at night where it might be scary, and you might think, well, I want that. I want the thing that says run and hide if I don't feel safe. I want that thing that protects me. But understanding that a lot of this stuff happened, and then it gets recorded in our bodies, so it's coming up into response in situations where we're not actually physically unsafe.
Yeah.
So that becomes suffering then, and that, sometimes we don't explain it that way. Why is it suffering if something's protecting us?
Yeah.
If it's protecting us, what? But the thing is it's protecting us against emotional threats, and that's the thing. Against our own emotions is the thing to remember about trauma. It's protecting. It'll protect you against your own rage or terror in the same way that would protect against somebody who's about ready to stab you. It's like, no. It'll protect that till the end. And so that's painful because you're literally stuffing down something with that kind of force.
So in your case, so you're saying that then the moment was useful, survival, reptilian brain, to escape, but then a lot of your life, it was totally safe, but it was still playing out and will kind of make you hide and run, avoid close connection, avoid friendships, avoid spaces, avoid rooms.
Right, for the potential of being hurt, it was about fear.
Yeah.
It was in fear and trauma. So, because there wasn't a threat out there, but the trauma kept me locked up so that I wouldn't go out and get hurt again, in other words. And so it's like that kind of frozen fear. That's not about physical safety.
So here, if you put the map, we have the, so when you think about fear, it's the fear, existential fear of survival, fear of death, but we are mostly dealing with fear of feeling this. Like, I don't want to feel this. Also, these are other kind of commands. These are kind of repression commands. Like, I was doing some inquiry with some really painful stuff, and this emotion will come after a lot of work to some sadness, some fear, some loneliness, and really intense. And then I will just use some inquiry just to, now that it's on top, just to make sure to feel it, to like, hey, I want to feel this, or not afraid to feel this. And although I'm a therapist and I think I'm a skilled KI facilitator and really honest spiritual practitioner, it will come, no, man, I don't want to feel this, man. I don't want to feel it. Fuck this. So it's like not wanting to feel something. And it's not because I'm bad or lazy, or it's just, I guess the past was talking. The child in me, the past talking. Fear of fear.
Yeah, me too. And it's interesting that you said that you're a therapist and a facilitator, because I'm a teacher, and I just don't think that trauma discriminates in that way, though. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't care whether you're a teacher or a facilitator. It cares about protection and safety. So maybe that will help somebody listening if they look and go, oh, well, because you mentioned you did, I don't know if you want to mention this, but you did the video on sadness repression.
Yeah.
Memoirs of a Sadness Repression, which I highly recommend anybody to watch, so you can get a really good sense of what sadness and grief repression looks like. But then somebody might have said afterwards, like, are you okay? Not understanding that, like, you're doing something really loving for yourself in that video. You're moving towards suffering. I don't know where I'm going with that, other than I just want to explain to people, like, there's a lot of benefit of going towards the things that are scary if you do it skillfully. So I just want to, like, anybody who thinks, oh, these are teachers and facilitators who still have sadness or this repression. Yeah, because we're being honest. Others do too. They just don't necessarily share about it, or they don't know about it. The trauma is what I've learned is the layering of the trauma, the repression and suppression of emotion was happening while I was resting as awareness through the years. It was just happening while the whole thing was going on. And once I recognized that was happening, like literally as I was resting as awareness, I know that I was layering in repression. I saw that happening.
What can you explain what I mean? You were layering in repression.
Yeah, so it would be like if anger started to come up, now that I understand frozen fear, some of the resistance I was feeling to that was the fear. So by just resting with it and not digging a little bit more, it's
Yeah,
like I was solidifying the frozen fear there. It's like, this is too scary. We're not going to deal with this. And it looked like presence because it looked
yeah,
peaceful when you shove something down. It's more peaceful.
yeah.
But yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I guess what Scott was, okay, so let's slow it down. So Scott was talking about his version of, okay, then it was dangerous and run or hide was totally wired in the mammalian to escape, but then these commands are silently playing out, affecting relationships and how he shows up in the world. Yeah, for me, there was this multiple times as a child loss of family, and early on also this is very difficult to get to it and difficult to heal if it's like a baby. You know, and I have clients that have been much worse than me, like, you know, it's like they left them in the maternity, they left and they were there 3 days, 3 or 4 days of their life were kind of in a little glass box. This is like this is for the baby consciousness that is like so fucking extremely and somehow, although they didn't have thoughts, it's all the life, unless one does a lot of skillful work, is going to affect relationships and how it's hard to get close, or go on, it gets very clingy, or is like a lot of relational fear and stuff. So for me, I was mentioning this don't leave me, don't go as a trauma command. Don't go, don't leave me, please don't leave me, don't go. But then how it plays out is that later I organized myself so that to never ever have to deal with that. So to not feel that anymore. And so in a way that, okay, I'm going in relationships where I'm not going too deep, I'm staying superficial, and
Yeah.
really I am I had this many years of my life, I will be in relationships and at some point I'll be like, okay, well, I think that is done. I think that that's not good. It's over. And just no reason. And it was bewildering both for me and for the other person. So this was for a long time. Like, why? Well, so that I don't experience that as a baby. I don't experience that. So basically, I abandoned without even knowing what I was doing in order to not feel abandoned, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even going in relationships, maybe which are I don't know, going for relationships where they felt safer in case if I'm abandoned, I'm kind of more okay. So
Yeah.
it's totally governing decades of relationship, and this creates so much unfulfillment and crazy making. And also somebody said, yeah, I don't know if you, I guess you can relate to this, maybe. Makes sense to me. What happened to us as a child, what was done to us as a child, or what happened to us, we tend to do it to others in some way. I mean, at least it applies to me.
Yeah. In what way did it apply? So I can understand that. I think I
Well,
understand.
let's say, although, you know, I mean, actually what happened in my family, my mother and all that happened was just out of the greatest love. She sent me somewhere else and all of that. But for the child, there was this loss, and like, I use this like to be separated from the you know, the mother,
Mhm.
or separated from the person there. So this separation that happened to me, I have chronically done this to other women. I
Yeah.
just left. So what happened to me, I just left and I left them hanging. like this. You know, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I have the same pattern. Just real quickly, is I was bullied by guys my age, boys my age. I actually had sex with half of them as a little kid. We messed around. It's what little boys do sometimes. And that played into and screwed me up forever in terms of relationships. So I kept acting that out. Going back to people who were like that, who were kind of bullying and who would treat me like shit, basically. And I would try to get their love. And then I would do it again. And then I would do it again. I just had different trauma than you. You know, I didn't have that extreme abandonment. I had like the bullying thing. So my whole thing was like, love me. Why do you not love me? Like, what's wrong with me? So I keep going back to that archetype, that straight, sort of like aloof, almost like mean male, and try to get that love over and over from my imprinting from childhood. So what I want to say to everybody is, even if you don't fit, like, even if when Mihai is sharing, you're like, well, that's not me. Or if you say, I wasn't bullied, that I think that's how we bamboozle ourselves. Because if you understand what we're saying, basically, is that important events and relationships leave a lasting imprint in our bodies. It doesn't matter that you didn't have a childhood like us. It's the structure that we're seeing universally. It's not about Mihai or Scott. It's the structure of suffering. And you had a different childhood. And even if you don't know the impact that those events or relationships had on your present, we can assure you that it's having a major impact on that. And so that's the point, isn't it? It's not to get lost in our details. It's to see that this is affecting all of us.
And now that you shared with me how it played out for you, actually, that's much more common in a way that what happened to you. Well, and also this is known in psychotherapy and psychology. I mean, this is known for like 50, 70 years. This is known that somehow the dynamic that played out and how I felt in the family of origin, I'm going to recreate factors and conditions to feel the same. And I'm attracting. So if I felt unloved and I felt I don't matter, and I felt that love was mixed with being controlled and bossed around or put down, and then I escape, I go to college, and finally I'm good. Then I fall in love with somebody who, again, is alcoholic, puts me down, does all these things. So this is common psychology 101, that this plays out over and over until we are healing it. And it seems like the thorough healing of it, from where we discovered, is to do the second dimension and the third dimension work, actually, to deprogram the imprints in us that are subconsciously saying yes to, hey, give me more of that. Give me more of that. You know, to be put down, and for me, to abandon more, to cut myself again, you know, because when I abandon relationships, I am suffering it too, you know. I'm like, so I'm recreating the suffering.
Yeah. Something just came up for me and then I lost it, but well, this is one thing that came up for me, is I feel like we do have to do this work. Like, and that's the thing, we're talking to somewhat of the spiritual crowd, because you mentioned something earlier, and I don't remember who you said that, but somebody said, well, I don't know about processing all this. I'm just going to be presence. Right. So that idea is like, so I think what we're saying here is, even in spirituality, we're still avoiding this, is what I mean. Like our whole life. I was doing this the other day on video. If you understand that the repression and the trauma is the core of suffering, if you don't, then that's a different thing. If you still don't think that. But if you know that it is, and you know what your system is doing, even as you're in spirituality or life, what would be healing, as you say, would be to open to this fully.
Yeah.
But what happens is the opposite. We're being taken away from it constantly. Remember to stay safe. So it's a little bit off subject, but I just listen to, and I can just hear people saying, well, can I just come back to resting as awareness or mindfulness and meditation? And there's other stuff we want to say about this too here, is that this is really deeply buried, really deeply buried. And it's not something that is easy to work with, and it takes skill. So hopefully we can talk a little bit about that too, the skill that's needed.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. Like that here is, let's say, the trauma and repression that happened early on, and on this grows a whole tree. So this was the first seed, and then this grows a whole tree with concepts and way of being, and which later the non-dual teacher says, hey, you see, it's the sense of separation. This is the sense of separation, and you need to let go and just see that this tree formed on trauma and repression, this is not real, and this is not you, and you just see through it. And so, but what we discovered is that, I mean, yeah, I saw through it, and then I was like, yeah, okay, but the this remained, and I guess there's the trauma and repression from childhood, but then I was very serious about awareness practices like you, and those awareness practices further push down these things, because I got very good at snuffing things away. There would be a negative emotion or some emotion, I would come back to presence, into the present moment, and that somehow worked for some time, because I would not go into suffering, let's say. I would come back like a robot. But at the same time, that is not sustainable, and I was living all of this unresolved, basically. So now, like you, I had to go back, and so yeah, so now I'm going and working very hard to feel sadness again, and to really stay with it, and to make conscious my fear, and to bring the loneliness up. So yeah.
Well, I want to add something to that, because I was just saying this on video. I'm sorry, I'm charging my phone. We hear allow it all, let everything be as it is. But if you can imagine like that, you have a little friend next to you that's already decided before you see anything that there are going to be certain things that you're not even going to see. It has an agenda. That little friend has a very powerful, strong agenda. He's protecting you, or she's protecting you from actually feeling everything. So if you think about it that way, that'll help when you understand that when we're just with the experience, this stuff is hiding, and it's almost like you have a little friend here who's making sure that you don't allow or experience everything. If you can understand that, then what we're doing is we're going to that friend.
Yeah.
It's not really a friend, we're going to that that's controlling everything.
Yeah.
That's just a little metaphor that helps.
Yeah, no, and the little friend who is it's almost like, in psychology, it's like the child state, or the inner child, and usually in the child work, it's like, yeah, buddy, I love you, come, I love you, I accept you, and it's okay, I'm sorry that this happened to you. And this is good stuff, but what's in the child, the little friend, the child is saying, don't get close to people, don't trust them, no, don't, it's not safe to love. I'm saying this is my stuff. It's not safe to love. It's not safe to love. Don't trust love. Fuck love, man. It's going to end. This is going to end. Don't even get there. And then it says, hey, hide, be careful, look good. Hide, be nice, be so this little friend, and it's much more powerful than my philosophical library of spirituality in my
if you're walking down the road and you met rage, you wouldn't sit there probably and try to negotiate with it, because it's not going to listen to you. Like sheer terror is hard to negotiate with. Real terror. So
Yeah.
think about it is like meeting the inner child. What I see a lot of people doing is as soon as they start negotiating with the child, they're trying to keep the energy of that child at bay. They don't even realize they're doing it, because if you really let that child speak, it would be pure rage, terror, and shock. So you can't really negotiate with pure terror, rage, and shock. But once you make it conscious, you can let that child speak in awareness fully, like in a very skillful way. You're not negotiating with that child at that point. You're not sitting there going, it's okay, because it's not okay to that child. It's no matter how much you say it, that child is raging, afraid. That's not really a child there, you know. But I think if we can understand that, we might treat it with the respect that it deserves. The respect is this very powerful self-protecting condition. This isn't just a small inner child that comes up to negotiate with and coddle and hug. You can do that, but you have to understand this is pure rage and terror at some level. And if you understand that, you have a certain amount of respect and reverence for that, you're going to learn the skills that you need there. You're not going to treat that as something that you just do very, very lightly or take it very, it's a very serious work, actually.
Yeah.